if I had a nickel for every time the M4 smashed through an urban area on a narrow, twisty concrete viaduct, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice. It's not very often we find something as intrusive as this. This is the M4 at Port Talbot, Wales's first truly urban motorway, and quite a history to it. So how did this come to be? Well, back in the 1950s, the A48 between Cardiff and Swansea was a bit rubbish, for want of a better description. Neath got a bypass first, which included the high-level bridge over the river there, and that became a landmark. It also meant that the A48 slammed into Port Talbot coming from the west, and this was a major bottleneck. The A48 to the east of Port Talbot was a fairly decent road coming across from Bridgend, mostly dual carriageway or 3 lanes, but again slammed into Port Talbot. And the problem with Port Talbot is that there's sea on one side and mountains on the other, so the only place for an improved road was to be through the middle of the town. Now, Port Talbot was quite densely packed, very industrial with the steelworks. It wasn't really feasible to start demolishing houses left, right and centre, but a path of least resistance had to be found, and the result was this elevated motorway. One of the earliest ones built in the country. Wales had to again experience some harsh lessons so the rest of us could learn. Always seems to be the way, doesn't it, where Wales suffers so the rest of us can prosper. But yeah, 1966 this opened as the A48M because it wasn't connected to any other motorways. It later became part of the M4, and for a long time it was the start of the M4 gap, where that aforementioned high-level bridge at Neath was still the A48 with the M4 either side of it. That wasn't plugged in until 1995 with a second high-level bridge. So there are now 2 landmarks crossing the River Neath there, and the gateway into Swansea is quite impressive on an engineering level as a result. Right, shall we have a nosy round then and see what kind of an impact this motorway's had on this small Welsh town? So when you drive over this on the M4, you do actually see chimney stacks, and it is at rooftop level. It's quite a staggering bit of design, really. So, I've just walked through that subway, and now it's brought me to an alley that is adjacent to the motorway. But it just seems one of those unusual bits of highway design that, again, you would never build this today. But in the 60s, this was seen as the future. Of course, those of you who use this motorway regularly will know it's got a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, it's got 2 lanes in each direction, it's very congested, it's really past its best, the structure's falling to bits. None of it's really, probably, what we could say, got a long-term shelf life. There has to be some serious work done to bring this back up to modern requirements. It'll be interesting to see what, if anything, can actually be done. Of course, like most projects at the time, everyone was optimistic about the future. It was only when it was finished and the results were plain to see that a little bit of a creeping doubt came in. This, remember, was about 3 or 4 years before the Westway opened in London. So when all the Londoners acted surprised that you can't build an elevated road past people's bedroom windows, if they'd bothered to come west, they'd have already known that that's happened. The precedent was here. It had already been set. And they thought, well, if they can get away with it in sleepy West Wales, they can obviously get away with it in less sleepy West London. And we all know how that turned out. So once again, I find myself returning to the age-old line that I use on these videos. Fantastic idea, maybe, some interesting engineering, execution not resulted in what people hoped for, but it fascinates me just how the optimism again, you know, these things had to happen, I suppose, so we could learn to not do them again. That's the only way to really describe it. But nowadays we know what works and what doesn't, so we shouldn't be making mistakes, yet we still do. Junction 40 must be one of the smallest roundabout interchanges in the United Kingdom. The whole roundabout is visible behind me, it's tiny. This just shows how tightly knit into the existing urban landscape this motorway is. It's bonkers. I think somebody described it once as, imagine the scene from Star Wars Episode 4 when everybody goes into that trench to blow up the Death Star. That's how hemmed in it feels. And they'd be right. I can't imagine being laid to rest in that cemetery is very peaceful these days. It's enough to make you want to spin, isn't it? Strictly speaking, to cross over there, I have to enter an area bounded by motorway regulations, which is illegal. That sign should be behind the footway, strictly speaking. Oh well, in the words of Judas Priest, breaking the law. Everything about this viaduct has to be economical with space because it's up against the town. Even the direction signs have to be mounted at ground level and made tall to meet the level of the viaduct. That's how economical with space this thing has to be because of where it's positioned. Absolutely bonkers. Show me a Bryn sign. Some more spindly supports just to keep up that aesthetic, but that's not why we're here. I want to show you what's got to be a candidate for the tallest concrete signposts in the world. It's quite difficult to get in shot really, but you can see the what used to be nicknamed death prongs, where concrete reaches were put out for a floodlight onto the side. The floodlight's gone here, but the prongs remain. These are probably the only ones in the country that would never have been hit by a passing vehicle. I think Junction 40 is the most obvious place where the effect of the motorway is known. 40 to 41, definitely. 40 to 39, the original southern terminus, is less pronounced, but it still has some surprises, which we're now going to go and look at. The final surprise has to be this little underpass to get to Inkerman Road. You wouldn't know it was here unless you saw it on a map, but look how close we are to the motorway. I can literally put my hand over the wall and be on the M4. It's absolutely staggering engineering. It would never be built today, but as I keep saying, things like this are fascinating. Whether you agree with their existence or not, you have to admit a lot of work and thought did go into it. It's just that the outputs have always been a bit... So the question is what would you do with this? I'd be interested to see some ideas. Would you perhaps take it into the mountains in a tunnel to avoid the town and demolish the viaduct? Would you take it out onto the water on a viaduct like's happened in the island of Reunion? Maybe we should have a think, because one day this viaduct is going to need to be replaced and a very difficult conversation will have to happen surrounding that. That little sign there says sound horn because it's a 90-degree bend that you can't see anything around. 60s engineering. Right, I think it's time I brought this to a close. That was a whistle-stop tour of the Port Talbot bypass, perhaps one of the strangest motorways we have. Have you been on it? Be interested to hear your stories about it. As always, keep comments civil. If you like the video, like and subscribe. All that stuff, you know. Feel free to support me on Patreon and Ko-fi, as these wonderful people on screen are. That's optional, of course, but you do get your name on a little slide, so maybe that would be a bribe for you, I don't know. There's no compulsion. I just appreciate you watching my content more than anything. And with that, I'll catch you next time. Take care. Bye bye.